Disability Rights Advocates, 2020 Virtual Gala, 30 Years of the ADA, Warriors for Justice. 1 in 5 people in the U.S. has a disability. Most of us at some point in our lives will have a disability. Over 25 million people in the U.S. have vision loss. Over 48 million people in the U.S. have hearing loss. Disability Rights Advocates protects the civil rights of people with all types of disabilities. For this reason, the following video has been made fully accessible by the use of open captioning for the deaf and hard of hearing and open audio description for people who are blind and low vision. Audio description provided by Michelle Spitz, woman of her word. An institutional corridor lined with barred cells.
You wake up this morning, you need to pray because inside ICE, you have to praise, you have to give God thanks because you're still alive, you're not dying. In immigration, they don't treat you as human beings, they treat you as animals.
Men wearing red shirts and pants resembling medical scrubs file through a doorway. A guard stands nearby. In 2016, Jimmy Sudney was detained by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency and spent nearly 4 years in ICE custody. In a photo, a man in a leg brace poses by a red SUV. In August 2019, DRA and partners filed a lawsuit highlighting ICE's illegal disregard of medical and mental health needs and discrimination against immigrants with disabilities.
No medical attention, no sanitized attention, no food attention. It was a bad experience, that I wish no other people have to go through that.
The stark exterior of the Adelanto Detention Facility West. Jimmy recounts an incident of unprovoked abuse he suffered from a guard at the detention facility.
I remember one time they had a fight and I was just standing by and the lady did not even go to the fight where I was sit down and eat, and then she just come and spray me in my face with the pepper spray.
Jimmy grimaces, squeezing his eyes tightly shut at the memory. He points to his right eye.
This eye was pretty much swallowed up for nothing. And the next day I had a seizure and I went to the hospital because I had a seizure.
Jimmy has multiple health conditions such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and heart complications, making him extremely vulnerable to COVID-19.
If somebody had COVID, everybody was gonna have it because there's no space, it's crowded, and that person might be die before they finally take them to the hospital.
At the facility, dozens of men stand shoulder to shoulder as they line the walls of a cafeteria. Because of his dire circumstances, Jimmy eventually made contact with DRA, hoping that they would be able to help him get out of ICE detention.
DRA contact ICE and say, hey, why Jimmy hasn't seen a doctor yet? Can I have his medical record? Putting pressure on ICE. DRA was putting pressure on ICE.
DRA and partners filed a preliminary injunction against ICE calling for the release of detained immigrants with high risk of contracting COVID-19. Rows of bunk beds lie end-to-end in a massive dormitory. On April 3, 2020, Jimmy Sudney was released from the Adelanto ICE detention facility.
So the day I was out, I was pretty much happy, I run to the parking lot, to finally see my mom, give her a real hug, and I was so happy, and say, oh, thank God. That was the best feeling of life, and when I see my little girl, she run to me and give me a hug, that was the best thing in life,
Jimmy, wearing a tuxedo shirt and tie, poses with his young daughter wearing a gauzy white dress. In a selfie, they lean together head to head.
I have my daughter, I have a job, I go to work, and I'm studying a day-by-day life. I'm grateful of DRA will help me, and the lawyer will help me file the paper. I'm grateful not being in ICE custody. I'm grateful of my life.
At a protest, demonstrators of all abilities hold signs that read, "Respect disability rights," "Provide adequate health care," and "This isn't a processing center, it's hell." Many wear t-shirts with the message, "Hold ICE accountable." DRA continues to fight for the rights of immigrants detained by ICE across the country. DRA has pursued impact litigation all over the country, improving almost every aspect of people's lives. 25 dots populate a map of the United States, marking locations from Alaska to Texas and from the East Coast to the West. Icons appear that encircle the country: criminal justice, housing and homelessness, emergency preparedness, architectural barriers, education, transportation, healthcare, employment, technology, voting, and many more. A woman directs her wheelchair and attention towards a computer screen. Liz Fust is a client of DRA and an attorney in Louisville, Kentucky. She had a spinal cord stroke in 2006 and is a T7 paraplegic. In a photo, she scales a rocky crevice, her hands and feet pressed against opposite walls. At First Urology in 2019, Liz's physician prescribed a CT scan, a procedure that is conveniently performed at the same location as her physician's practice.
When I went to schedule the CT, the scheduler asked me if I was a full lift. I said, well, I don't know what that means. My arms work so I can assist, but I do need help to transfer to a CT scanner to have this done. And she said, well, we don't do that. We won't help people transfer. And I said, I think that's a violation of the ADA. And she said, well, we have a policy. So she handed me the written policy. It's really upsetting. It gives you a feeling that you're not worthy. You are unworthy of their full care. Having access to medical care is a problem. It is rarely accessible. This is just the first time someone flat out refused and showed me a written policy.
With the help of DRA attorneys, Liz filed a lawsuit against First Urology seeking to require them to provide accessible medical equipment and enact policies, procedures, and training to deliver adequate care to all patients with mobility disabilities.
I'm enormously grateful for DRA, and I urge everyone who may be listening to this to support DRA because this work is important and there are not a lot of people who can do it.
On July 27, 2020, DRA filed a lawsuit against the North Carolina State Board of Elections for excluding North Carolinians with disabilities from their absentee voting program. A young woman in a pink hoodie.
There are 50 states in the United States, and not all of them allow people with disabilities to vote through absentee ballots.
Kendall Gibbs is 23 years old and from North Carolina. She is visually impaired and a member of the North Carolina Council of the Blind.
So in this 2020 election, we would have to have someone physically fill out our ballot for us, which we felt was a breach of privacy and independence as a person with a visual impairment. So I decided to take it upon myself, along with a couple of others, to be a voice for those who want to vote absentee ballot but cannot. And it was definitely an honor that disability rights advocates decided to take our case.
In a Zoom meeting, Kendall smiles and chats with a DRA representative.
The first absentee voting case that we brought was actually in New York to make absentee voting for their primary accessible to voters with disabilities.
Rosie Bichelle is the Justice Catalyst Fellow at Disability Rights Advocates and a lawyer on Kendall's case.
In the North Carolina absentee voting case, our primary obstacles there were the state's unwillingness to recognize the urgency of needing this kind of fix. They acknowledged that their absentee voting program discriminated against voters with disabilities, but they just said that they didn't have enough time to do anything about it before November 3rd. The judge did not buy their argument that there wasn't enough time, and lo and behold, they're working on implementing now. So it seems that there was enough time for them to do it the whole time. They just didn't want to do it.
It was on a Wednesday, and the judge dismissed. He went for a recess. About 5 o'clock that evening, I got a call from Disability Rights Advocates stating that we had won the case. And my first statement was, history has been made. It's been 30 years and I'm not even 30 years old yet. So it's been amazing. The emotions were immense because I was shocked, empowered, impressed that, I am 23 years old and I had a part of such an amazing case. As a person with a visual impairment, it definitely showed me, that I have the ability to do things like this. I have the ability to advocate and express my opinion to make things happen.
Demonstrators carry signs. We heart ADA. Disability rights are civil rights. A man in a suit and an open collar.
What disability rights advocates fight for every day are the civil rights of people with disabilities.
In a photo, he speaks at a lectern. Daniel Brown is a lawyer for Shepard, Mullen, Richter, and Hampton LLP, who has worked as co-counsel with DRA on numerous accessibility cases over the last decade.
I personally witnessed the impact of DRA's cases when my brother visited New York City and for the first time was able to hail an accessible taxi. It just shows how important the work is.
Daniel and his brother in a wheelchair smile for a photo.
You know, my brother, who grew up in New York City, all of a sudden was unable to
Dan wipes a tear from his eye.
get a taxi if he wanted. Was absurd. And if not for disability rights advocates, that would still be the case today.
Jimmy Sudney.
The hope I had is somebody thinking about us, and DRA is the one who thinking about reforming immigration. So that was my best hope.
Liz Fust.
I'm enormously grateful. You know, I feel at ease knowing that they have my back.
Kendall Gibbs.
Thank you. Thank you for taking on this case. Thank you for being so generous and for being so passionate, patient, and being such a strong advocate.
DRA staff posed together at an event. Daniel Brown.
The reason that DRA's work is so important is most of their cases don't impact one or two people. They impact thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of people.
At the ICE protest, a speaker stands at a podium bearing the sign, "Hold ICE accountable." A sign language interpreter stands nearby.
The fight that DRA fights every day couldn't be more important to me and my brother and everyone who has or knows someone with a disability.
Liz smiles at dinner with friends. In a video call, she laughs.
Everyone's life is better because of the cases and the results that DRA has had.
Kendall hugs a black lab. In a video call, she smiles broadly. Jimmy and his little girl take a selfie. In a video, his smile reveals deep dimples. DRA, Disability Rights Advocates, 2020 Virtual Gala. 30 years of the ADA, Warriors for Justice.